Hi, you're listening to the Childfree Wealth Podcast. We're your hosts, Bri and Dr. J, certified financial planner. Here we discuss life and finances as it relates to being child-free. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please consult your advisor before implementing any ideas heard on this podcast. This week we have Ashley on the podcast. She was on last week talking about life as a soloist, but this week we're talking all about pride. I myself am bisexual and in a lesbian relationship. I have a wife. Ashley is also queer. So Ashley, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us who you are a bit for people who may not have heard of it.
Absolutely. I guess as a child-free person and also as a queer person, I've kind of become used to sort of throwing out the life script in a number of ways. So I'm pretty late bloomer as far as discovering, or I guess acknowledging that I was queer. I didn't come out until I was almost 35, and I'll be 40 in January. So I kind of feel like a late bloomer. And in some ways, I'm a little envious of these kids in their teens and 20s now that have been able to acknowledge their whole life, that they were queer, and they've had a support network and so on. I've kind of had to make my own way in the world as far as that's concerned, but I'm used to it at this point, child-free, queer. It all fits.
Okay. So I came out when I was 20, so it was 15 years earlier than you. I'm 25 now, so I've been out for 5 years, almost 6 years. And that is obviously a very different life. So kind of like, what did that look like growing up and, living life as a straight individual and continuing to live adulthood as a straight individual until your mid-30s?
What that looked like in many respects was a lot of me doing what I thought I was supposed to do. And I got to say, I'm very glad that didn't extend to having children, because that would have been a massive mistake. And at least I knew that early enough to be able to avoid that. But I had 2 attempts at straight monogamous marriage, and neither one worked out, for different reasons. And, I got divorced the first time when I was 28. I got married the first time way too young at 22 to the only person that I had ever dated, kissed, any of that, which to think back, it's hindsight is always 2020. And I think back on that, and I can't believe that I was allowed to do that. And you got married the second time at 31, and thought, okay, I'm better prepared, and we're going to go into this again and try it. And no, by the end of that marriage, I was too deep into discovering who I actually was and what I actually wanted out of life, and unfortunately didn't really quite mesh with my now second ex-husband. And he and I are still friends, and it's cool. He lives in another state and everything, but it's been hard. It's been hard. I would encourage anybody that is questioning who they are in any way to avoid making that kind of serious commitment to someone else, especially if it involves legalities like a marriage does.
Mm-hmm. That can be super difficult when you're trying to figure out who you are, and then also, going out into the world. So for me, I kind of always knew, and I grew up in a religious household, and then I would go to a church, and I was one church that my parents went to, and I also went to another one. One of the churches was not so great. The one my parents went to is actually very open and accepting. But I remember leaving church one time and a friend asking, "Do you think that gay people are a sin?" And I was so stunned, because at that point I kind of already knew, but it was like I couldn't really say anything because I was so stuck in that, what is happening? And I didn't actually come out until after I was in a relationship. And I came out with a picture on Facebook that said, "The world has bigger problems than girls who kiss girls and boys who kiss boys." And it was a picture of me and my now wife for National Coming Out Day. And so my experience probably looked very different than yours, because I was kind of like, "Hey everybody, I'm out, and adios, like if you don't like this." But I had also never been married or anything, and the stakes were, I don't want to say a lot lower, but also they were, because I didn't have that legal marriage like you talked about, being married and all of that, to be worried about, I guess, and can quote unquote contend with in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like it. Although oddly enough, I also came out on Facebook on National Coming Out Day in
Yeah.
2018, interestingly enough, after spending some time kind of reckoning with what I was feeling. And I guess as you may have gathered, I'm also polyamorous, which, you know, we're just throwing out the life script left and right here. So me coming out as queer wasn't necessarily doomed to be the end of whatever relationship that I was in at the time, which, you know, I was still with my second husband. It just, we split up for a variety of reasons, and that really wasn't the top one. So more so me discovering that, okay, this whole, the marriage thing and, you know, trying to live with someone else full time and just all of that was just not working. And, you know, he wanted different things, and I don't know, we were better friends than we were spouses, I think, ultimately.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. I guess maybe we should actually define like the different letters and different identities for people who are maybe listening to this and have no idea. So
That's a good idea.
yeah, there's LGBTQ, so lesbian, gay, bisexual, LGBT, transgender, and then queer.
I've also seen IA and plus, which in my writing on the topic, I've been putting LGBTQIA plus, which would also include intersex, asexual, and then plus for anybody that, you know, I identify as pansexual, which, you know, P is not part of that string of letters. Usually I just self-identified other people as queer because they seem to understand that. And for me to try to break down, okay, what is pansexual? And often I get, isn't that just bi? And I'm like, no, there's a lot of connective tissue there, but we sort of define that a little bit differently. And it's all on each of us to kind of figure out which label works best for us. And, you know, for me also, another reason why it took me so long to come out is because so many women who, you know, have queer identities, unfortunately, our sexuality is often kind of held up as being for the benefit of men. You know, how many straight guys do you know are into lesbian porn, for example? And and one of the reasons why, you know, bisexual didn't feel right for me, and I just, you know, I know bisexuals, you know, I love bisexuals. It just wasn't a fit for me, you know. And I feel like pansexual is kind of a little bit more, I don't know, it fit better. I like the flag better. You know? We all have to find the label that works for us.
That is totally fair. So lesbian women who like women, gay men who like men. Sometimes people call themselves gay even if they're women, you know, kind of whatever. Bisexual, you like men or women.
Will occasionally refer to myself as gay, for sure. You know.
Oh yeah, same. Same here. Transgender is somebody who was born with a sex marker that they don't identify with, and so maybe they were born and labeled male their entire life, but they, you know, are like, nope, this isn't right. I'm a woman. You'll see
AFAB or AMAB, you know, assigned male at birth, assigned female at birth.
Mm-hmm. Good point there. Do you want to explain more of like queer and all of the queer, intersex, asexual, pansexual, all of those?
I mean, we can, but I think at a certain point, it's just alphabet soup for people. I think ultimately the best thing to keep in mind is, you know, if your attraction or your relationships with other people go beyond kind of that strict gender binary, male, female, you know, pairing off that way. In some respects, your queer sexuality is a spectrum. That's the other thing that I feel like people don't really reckon with, that a lot of people maybe don't strictly identify with one or the other.
That is a really good point. And I don't think you necessarily have to understand every letter, because even me being part of the community, I'm like, I don't necessarily understand all of the other letters. Like, I understand the ones that I explained there, but I don't really understand some of the other ones. But it's
well, that would be a reasonable. Okay, that's fair. Like, am I explaining for the benefit of our listeners? Or, okay, so someone who is intersex, sometimes babies are born with what they call ambiguous genitalia, or, you know, chromosome differences. I know someone who is actually XXY rather than being
Okay.
XY or XX. So it's these people that will tell you that, oh, gender is biological. Gender is not biological. It is not.
Mm-hmm.
It is psychological. And it is up to us to define that for ourselves. Even, me, my pronouns are she and hers. And I definitely do identify as a woman. I am cis female. I was born a woman, assigned female at birth. My gender expression of my femininity might look different from another person's. For example, I wear my hair short. I know for a long time, that was considered to be such an unfeminine thing. And I've had my hair short like this for most of the last 12 years. And to me, it doesn't seem like any less of a feminine thing to have short hair. And yet, conversely, you'll see men with long hair and, oh, you look like a woman. Hair is not gendered. Wear your hair however you like.
Exactly. I sometimes will jokingly say, I don't know how people didn't realize before, because after, I think it was the week after I graduated from high school, I went to a town about 2.5 hours away, and I shaved a triangle into the back of my head. Did that whole undercut design thing.
Oh, nice.
And had that going on for a while. Now, that's not obviously they're definitely part of the LGBTQ community, but that was just kind of a joke for him. Oh, well, should have seen it coming. I had a shaved back of the head, but yeah, you're right. Hair doesn't have a gender, and that's weird that we think it does.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
We're all humans. That's the main thing.
Exactly. And, wear your hair however you want. All right. So all of those different things, one, will impact our life experiences, how we identify, but also when it comes to telling people around us, it can be really scary because you don't know if you're going to be cut off by people, whether it is friends or family. And if you are a younger person who is still financially dependent on their parents, when I came out, I was in college and still financially dependent on my parents. Yeah. And I had no idea if they were going to respond well or not. And then, as you're older, I'm sure that you also had different feelings about it, being married and all of that. Can you explain more, as to the feelings you had surrounding coming out and whether or not that was going to impact your finances?
I wasn't so much worried about a financial impact because, again, by the time I was in my mid-30s, I was on my own financially. I was married to someone else and sharing finances at that time. And, we ended up splitting up a year later, and, I had to handle my own stuff going forward. And now I am completely financially independent and solo and on my own, as you all heard in last week's episode. And I am happy for that. But it was more so what are my friends going to say? I'm actually not super close to my family. I did come out to my father, and, my father being a man in his 60s, the word queer, he remembers that being an offensive term. And I had to explain, it's okay, Dad, we've reclaimed the term. It's all right to call us that now. At least I haven't talked to many people who are offended by that, and I'm glad. Although I'm sure if someone's offended by my identifying as queer in this podcast, they might leave us a comment, but that's okay.
Probably. And yeah. Oh well.
Pretty much. Yeah. More so what are my friends going to think? I've also done a really good job of surrounding myself with people that see eye to eye with me, which that has been one of the nicer things about getting older, and also from the perspective of caring less and less ultimately what people do think. As I close in on 40, I look forward to giving even fewer damns going forward.
Oh, I like that. Giving even fewer damns.
Especially as a woman, because we are so socialized to be so concerned that we're going to be viewed as selfish or as unfeeling, and especially a child-free woman. Oh, the ultimate in selfish and uncaring.
Absolutely. And it's just, I think it's kind of funny because to be LGBTQ and be child free or have a child, you have to put way more thought into it than anybody else, because there are not accidents happening more than likely, like maybe in some instances, but for the most part, there's likely not going to be an accidental child. So,
well, I mean,
to...
the thing about being pansexual is I'm interested in everybody, and
that's
to my regret, on
point.
some days that does include men. This is how you know sexuality isn't a choice.
Yeah, it's like, I often say too, because I grew up in South Dakota, so very conservative background.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Please.
Very.
I'm sure you've had some interesting experiences on all fronts, on the queer front as well as on the child-free front.
Yeah, and I mean, people just assume that I'm not going to have kids, and so I don't really. It's never been a thing that I've had to like talk about, because they automatically assume never having kids, whatever. Like,
that's
cool.
I mean, that's lucky, given how many women I've talked to that, get family pressure, get friend pressure, get stranger pressure.
Mm-hmm. And, I'd say people under 40 tend to ask. People over 40 just don't say anything. And honestly, I'm like, it's not a conversation I need to have with you. So,
yeah,
whatever. But yeah, growing up there and being, bi, like, when people say things to me, or why would you want to do that? Do you think I would want to wake up every day and be a part of like one of the most hated groups in our society today? No. Like, who does? So do you think I'm choosing this? Absolutely not. I don't know anybody who would say that this is a choice who's part of the community. Like, I don't know. What do you think about that?
The next time a straight person tells you, "Oh, you chose this," tell them, "Well, did you choose your sexuality? When did you choose your sex? How did you choose your sexuality? Did you go to the store and pick it out off the shelf?" I don't understand people.
Yeah, aisle 3, right next to the flour and sugar, for anybody wondering where you want to find it. It's so interesting. Ashley actually gave me a really good article with some different stats about, LGBTQ people, but also how the finances impact. And so I'm going to read some of these here. But it says, on average, same-sex couples make $1,681 more than opposite-sex couples. However, this trend is driven by male same-sex couples who make $17,250 more than opposite-sex couples, which obviously we know there's a gender pay gap. So if you have two men in a relationship, you're going to be making more money. And then female same-sex couples earn $9,643 less than an opposite-sex married couple. Overall, I mean, there are not a lot of professions where people are paid the same. And I was having this conversation with my wife about this earlier. I was like, how do you think us being part of the community impacts our finances? And she goes, I really can't give a good answer of that because I'm in such a unique position where she's an airline pilot. So you can Google. Yeah. But you can Google airline pilot pay and you'll see the chart. So everybody gets paid the same regardless of who you are. However, if you're in a position where you have to negotiate your pay, or, well, if you're not an airline pilot or it's not set, you're more than likely negotiating your pay. You can very easily be at a disadvantage. And sometimes I had a job where I would be doing a lot of sales. I would just not say anything. People would talk to me on and on. I had a couple people who would talk to me on and on about a husband and all this and my boyfriend. And I did not say a thing. I just let them think what they thought because I was like, I don't know what this is going to do if I do say, nope, actually, I'm with a woman. Sorry. Like, that impacts my pay.
It can be very, very uncomfortable to not be able to be your true self at work. And this is true if you're polyamorous as well and have more than one partner, because you end up referring to the friend, and this is, my friend and I did so-and-so this weekend. And it's kind of heartbreaking. Regarding the article that I sent you, the research piece from the Ascent, which is part of the Motley Fool, which is a publication that I write for. And actually, by the time this podcast is published, I will have a piece out, and maybe we can link to it in the show notes about the LGBTQIA plus pay gap and some steps that you can take if you're part of the community or if you're not, to kind of help mitigate that.
Yeah. Are you comfortable sharing some of those things now?
Absolutely. Okay. We'll save people the reading.
Well,
namely,
give us like one or two facts, and then we'll link. Everybody else can go read.
That's fair. That's fair. If you are in a position where you can be out in the context of work and be honest about who you are, I think that helps a great deal, because you don't know who you're working with. You might have colleagues that, are struggling with the question of their own sexuality and, can I come out? Am I going to have allies at work? Being honest and upfront with who you are can help them, and you might even find yourself in kind of a mentorship capacity. I have younger colleagues, in the work that I do now, and I've had student interns in the past that have thanked me for being open about being queer, and showing them that, hey, here's this person that's doing this job that I want to do, and they're older than me, and they're out of the closet, and, it seems to be working for them, and that can kind of give them hope for the future. Another thing you can do is work on your own professional skills. If there's a certification program that you can take to become, better, more skilled in your job, you should absolutely do that. Investing in yourself. The great Warren Buffett says, investing in yourself, that's the best investment you can make, and it's not even taxed. So there's nothing lost by that. And if you're not part of the community, but you're a supporter, be vocal about your support, especially if you're in a management role at your job. If you have a say over hiring and salaries, your support is incredibly important.
Absolutely. And I really liked how you said investing in yourself can be one of the big things you do, because that is something we talk about here at Childfree Wealth all the time. Is investing doesn't have to mean in the stock market or in a company. It can be you can be the investment, and getting yourself into a different position that helps you achieve the goals and desires that you have, and not what everybody else has. Because when you are queer, you are completely on a different life plan than the standard one. And you might go to college and get married and have kids and have a house and all this, but you might not, and that's okay. And I do think being somebody who is out, and for me anyway, I am very straight passing person. You would never know if you just walked by me on the street. And even I went to my very first Pride this past weekend, and I don't really have much for Pride stuff. So I had this so much bright Pride tank top on. Yes. See,
I've never been myself. Actually, I'm planning to go in the city closest to me this weekend. So that'll be my first time. All other previous June since I came out, I always had something going on that weekend. So this will be my first time, and I'm proud to say that I have all kinds of gear that I can wear and adorn myself with. And that's another thing too, is I'm year after year, I always hope that I am less and less straight passing.
Yeah, I was there, and I looked at my friend after we got there. I was like, I look like the straight friend, and she goes, yeah, you do.
Oh, now I will say the straight friend is also extremely important.
Yeah, so very true. But it was just that's not who I am, but that's how I look. So it was quite amusing. But you don't have to be super, queer looking to be living your life and have people look up to you. I've gotten messages from different people saying hey, thank you for, just sharing you and your wife. And it's oh, I had no idea. And they'll come out to me and they're I really haven't, come out yet. I don't know what to say. And I'm I don't know. I don't think it's fair for me to say, yes, you should come out. Or really, you have to decide that for yourself, because we don't know how your family and your friends are going to respond to that, and if you're even in a safe position to come out. That is very important. When you do come out, like, you need to be in a safe position or have access to a safe place to be. Because I wouldn't want somebody coming out and then getting hurt because of that. However, I don't want you to live your entire life in a closet either. So, I totally agree with just, being out and living your life. So, LGBTQ Americans face significantly higher poverty rates than heterosexual Americans, especially when it comes to trans individuals. 34% of trans men and 32% of trans women live in poverty, compared to 16% of cis men and women. That is double for trans people versus cis straight people. Double. And, we can turn on the news right now and see how badly people are being kicked right now who are part of the LGBT community. And it's like gotten to the point where I can't even keep up with it. I try and pay attention, but it is so constant that I'm lost and spinning. What do you think, Ashley? How do you feel about everything that's happening right now?
I have enough trans friends to be concerned, and I'm happy that many of them live in New York State, which is where I live, which, thankfully this is one of the better states to be in if you happen to be outside the societal norm in any respect. But, I worry about kids in places like Florida and Tennessee, and it's scary out there. It's scary out there. And honestly, it's kind of one more reason to be happy to be child free, that, it's enough to worry about myself, and I can live openly where I am now. I've got a big giant pride flag hanging off my balcony, and it's even in the Google Maps photo if you looked up my address, which is cool. I love that. And I love that I can do that here. And I've lived in other places around the country, in my old career. I had to move frequently for museum jobs. I lived in places that I honestly don't know that I'd even feel safe necessarily visiting now, which is disappointing. But I mean, the only thing that we can do is vote. And, if you have a friend that's in a bad situation and you can help them in any way, point them to a local support network for them, take them in, give them a job recommendation if they're looking for work, every little bit helps.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And whatever you can do to be supportive is really good. I like the idea of giving a job recommendation or, taking people in. That doesn't really require any, financial support from you. It's just, that's something that will really help people get ahead. And most jobs are filled by people who have recommended somebody. So if you have the ability to recommend somebody, why wouldn't you?
Very true. And if you do have financial support that you can provide, and maybe not, one person or one group in particular, the ACLU is a great place to donate to. Planned Parenthood is a great place to donate to. The Trevor Project is a great place to donate to. Human Rights Campaign. there are so many, queer supportive charitable organizations that would be thrilled to receive any financial support from you that you can offer.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You are so right about that. Just, you make a really good point about being able to be open where you live. And I talked earlier about growing up in a very conservative state where I don't think I would be safe being open there. And they had Pride recently there. And I was like, I don't know that I would even feel safe going there. Like, I don't trust the people in my hometown enough. Now, there are some people who I trust 100% and they're fantastic. But as a whole, I don't trust that town enough to even really go to those things. Mm-hmm. And that's sad. But that also is part of the reason here in this piece from the Ascent saying why LGBTQ people are in poverty is because they tend to live in cities like San Francisco, New York, what else was it? LA, and a couple other ones that are higher cost of living because they are safe places to live. And you shouldn't have to base where you live on whether or not it's safe. Every place should just be safe. That's really, really, really disappointing. I guess what advice do you have for somebody who is queer and they're not out yet right now, but they're looking to come out, and just kind of, if you could go back and tell yourself something, what would that be?
That the people that love you are going to love you regardless, and the people that don't love you don't matter. As much as they might think that they do, they don't. I feel like I come at this from a place of privilege in that, I am white. I was in my middle 30s, by the time I did come out. I can't imagine what it's like for some of these young people in their teens and 20s, that I don't know. In one respect, they're getting more representation in the media than I did as a child and a young person, but to be financially dependent still on a potentially unsupportive family network, that's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. That can be terrifying. And even although I was dependent, I don't want to pretend like I had, the teens, like you say now, or kids, because I was at the point where I got a job because I was so worried I wasn't going to be supported. Mm-hmm. I got a bunch of jobs to pay for things. However, I didn't end up needing that to be my case. But yeah, if you're a teen, it can be scary.
Even just kind of snoozing on even, I don't know, just thinking back, it was so obvious for so very long that I didn't just like dudes. Mm-hmm. Oh, well. Yeah. Hindsight, 2020.
Absolutely. I think back about some things and I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, it was very clear to me and I kind of knew, but I just shoved it down until I met my wife. So Ashley, thank you for coming on the show this week. We talked a lot about our experiences being child-free and being queer, and then Ashley also mentioned some resources earlier and different organizations to donate to if you're willing. We're going to put all of those in the show notes. If you have any questions about, being child-free and being queer, you are more than welcome to reach out. Send us an email. It's podcast@childfreewealth.com. We're happy to talk more and share more, or send us a message on one of our social media channels. You can find us at Childfree Wealth. Thanks, Ashley, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
That's all for this week's episode of Childfree Wealth Podcast. Be sure to follow Childfree Wealth on social media, email us at podcast@childfreewealth.com, or visit our website, www.childfreewealth.com.